This is Steve Adubato. We're in the Senate chamber here in the Statehouse. We are pleased to be joined by the Senate President Steve Sweeney. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
Good. This is a big day. This is the 24th of February we're doing this. Governor's going to be delivering his budget address this afternoon. But yesterday, Judge Mary Jacobson?
Yes.
Did she change the game on the pension issue by ruling that the state had to put in about $1.56 billion into the pension fund? Did she change the game?
She just reaffirmed what we did when we passed the legislation back in 2011, the benefit reforms. It required us to make a payment. And it was contractual. We made it a contractual right. We listened to the courts in the past saying, if this is what your intent is, then you should legislate it. And we did. And that's where the argument came in with me and the governor, that we made an agreement, we got a bill passed, workers are paying more towards their pensions, which they needed to, not willingly, but they're paying more, that we had to step up and make our payments. And unfortunately, the realities are, Steve, the economy didn't grow the way it needed to grow. When we factored in, a smoothing is what they call it, when you do 1/7 of a payment, we needed the economy to grow at a reasonable, basically what the rest of the nation was growing. And New Jersey hasn't.
Right.
And that's where the problem comes in. It's not that we can't fix this, it's that we need to fix the economy so that there's more revenue coming in. We're still half the jobs that we lost. We still haven't recovered half the jobs we lost since the 2008 recession, where New York and every other state have recovered all their jobs plus.
But Senator, let's play this out a little bit. The judge makes this ruling. The judge says the state has to make this payment. Obviously, the governor, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but say the governor and his people appeal this. Goes to the Supreme Court. We don't know what's going to happen. Again, we're doing this on the 24th. Let's play it out for a second. What would you say to those who argue, you know what, if the state doesn't have the money, even if you wanted to make the pension payment, the governor can't. And the Democrats, we talked to some of your colleagues, the Republican side, they say if the Democratic solution is to, quote, raise more taxes to get that revenue, that's not a viable solution.
Well, it's not a viable solution to them, but it is to us to, the millionaire's tax, which is not the end all to be all by
raising, excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting, Senator. The idea of raising taxes on those who earn $1 million or more, which has been proposed by some Democrats.
Which the governor's vetoed over and over again.
Is that a good idea?
It is a good idea because, Steve, the governor's been in office 5 years. This group of people, now we're talking a millionaire's tax, to be clear, is not changing anything that's in existence now, but the new tax would go on every dollar above $1 million. So it's not like I'm going $1, we're going above $1 million. And it generates about $660 million. And, it lapsed under Corzine. They can argue that we should have re-upped it before Corzine had left. The Democrats.
Which you didn't do.
Which we didn't, and they could, look, they can make that argument, but the point is, just because you didn't doesn't mean you shouldn't. And we're willing to advance it. And Steve, the workers are putting more skin in the game. They are doing it. They are paying.
Public employee workers.
Public employee workers. Anyone working for government. You pay for health care now. You remember a few years ago, they didn't pay for anything. Now they pay up to 35% of the premium for health care. So you have people paying thousands of dollars more for the health care. They're paying thousands of dollars more into their pension. It's not unreasonable to expect the state to live up to their commitment. And we passed, the reason why that court case worked for the public sector is we actually presented a budget to the governor that funded the pension.
Back up. The Democrats presented a budget last year.
Yes.
To the governor that funded the pension, but it included, Senator, the millionaire's tax.
Exactly.
And the governor said, no, I'm not going to support the millionaire's tax.
He was against it?
Philosophically, and also he argues that the problem he had with it, I'm not going to speak for the governor, but he actually, in an interview with me, he explained it for himself. You can go online, you read what the governor said. I'm sure he'll say it in a budget address again. He said the problem with the millionaire's tax is that even if you tax those folks, if in fact those who make $1 million file for residency in Florida because they want to avoid the millionaire's tax, they're not going to pay it, so we're not going to get the money, so then you can't fund the pension. Is he not right with that?
Steve, he would be right if that's what happened. But people that made more than $500,000, because that was the original one, which under McGreevey, those numbers grew in New Jersey. They didn't go down. So when Corzine did the millionaire's tax, when McGreevey did it and then Corzine did it, People didn't leave. Now, look, people leave because of the estate tax. We can argue that. But the point was we gave a budget that funded the pension payment. Now, you have to raise revenues somewhere in order to meet this obligation because there's no do-over button for workers, Steve. And you know the grief I took for doing it.
Public employees were not happy with you. You're a longtime union leader. Yeah, you did catch heat.
Would you say not happy? They.
Is that an understatement?
It's a little bit of an understatement. But the point was I knew what we were doing was the right thing. So doing the right thing is not always the easy thing, but it's the right thing. So the point now is, as we go forward, we presented a budget for a reason because he said, I can't fund it. And we said, that's not true. You're choosing not to fund it. Now, look, could you talk to unions going forward after you started funding it and made your good faith effort by putting the money in, saying we need to make further changes? They might come and work with you. But they're not going to work with you when you don't live up from the beginning. And that's where the problem, that's where
Why
the
do you think the governor's doing that? Why do you think the governor, from your perspective, Senator, your words, is not, quote, living up to the commitment that he made, from your point of view, when he got together with you and the Assembly Speaker in a bipartisan effort that he's talked about nationally? Why do you think he's not keeping that commitment?
Well, two things happened. One is the administration's economic recovery plan obviously hasn't worked because we haven't recovered all the jobs. Other states have. We haven't. We're 48th in the nation in job growth. We weren't 48th in the nation when Governor Christie came into office. So obviously something's not right there. And look, and he's making a choice of not taxing a group of people. Look, who really wants to talk about taxing anybody? You can spin that however you want. What we're talking about is the job creators that Chris Christie talked about on a regular basis, the people that are going to create all the jobs for us. They haven't been taxed. We've cut business taxes $540 million to try to help. Where's my jobs? So, Steve, they got to get in this thing together. I offered a sunsetting. I offered a scaled approach. As more revenues grow, we could reduce it. Because, again, there's a lot of solutions to the problem. But just saying, no, I'm not going to do that isn't the solution. Because, I could have done that with benefit reform back in 2011.
You're the first one to get on this.
Yeah, I could have said, no, I don't like the way we're doing it. I did it because we had a realistic approach to funding the pension.
And the time we have, Senator, let me ask you this. I want to talk about your idea with respect to public employee health benefits, which is a huge issue, which potentially could save a lot of money. But I want to ask you this. With the governor running for president, he hasn't announced officially. By the time the show airs, he may. What's your bet, by the way?
100%.
Okay, that's good. So let's try this. More importantly, when it comes to the issues we're dealing with here, what impact do you believe it's had on the governing of the state of New Jersey here in the Statehouse, with the governor doing what he has been doing? If anyone were to run for president and be a viable candidate, what impact do you believe it's had on the ability to do what has to be done to solve the problems? Because the governor has told me and many others in this business, in the media, he's taking care of business.
It's a little more difficult. It's more difficult than it has been, but it's not impossible, Steve. It's being able to have enough conversations to deal with issues on a regular basis.
You're talking to him about the Transportation Trust Fund. He told me in a public television interview, I said, what do you talk about with Senate President Sweeney and Assembly Speaker Prieto? He said, I'm not going to tell you. We negotiate in private. You say?
I agree. We don't do that.
But you are talking.
But we do talk.
How close are you to a solution?
Not as close as we'd like to be. But the Speaker and I are very close.
Speaker Prieto.
Yes, Speaker Prieto and I are very close to a TTF plan. Now it really comes down to where the governor is going to be. There's disagreement, but we're not going to express that in public. And I know people say, well, why don't you throw it out there? Because we actually want to get something done.
Has the governor been engaged in the process?
Yeah, we've been talking.
So all this criticism about the governor not being connected to the state, you don't buy it?
I can't say that, Steve. I can't say that because it has been more difficult. I'm not going to be openly critical at this time. For one reason, I'm still trying to work to get things done. Like my health care plan that I put out.
Talk about it. What is it?
It's going back to the way it was when, I think you're about the same age as me, when you used to have a relationship with your primary care doctor. And he manages your health care. So it's a shift from fee for services where, like right now, if you have the flu, which I know you don't feel well, your doctor would say, well, come in, I want to see you. Under this plan, the doctor who knows you'd say, look, a flu's going around, I'll just call a script in for you. They save the dollars from unnecessary visits to a doctor because the doctor actually knows your health care.
Right.
And for state employees, the beauty of this is there's no out-of-pocket costs. So you get to spend more time with your doctor, like I remember doing as a young man. And they manage your health care where you come in, there's a screen, they'll say, Steve, you didn't take your cholesterol medication, you didn't fill the script, how come? You need to get your blood work done. They stay involved in your health care, which keeps you healthier.
Well, hold on, but right now, Senator, we don't have that for public employees.
No, we don't.
But there are other states who do have it, and you have pointed to those states and said, wait, Vermont has it. Can you actually say that they have saved money and it's apples to apples, meaning New Jersey and Vermont, you can compare? Go ahead.
Absolutely. It is absolutely apples for apples, and in 14 states. This is actually more prevalent in the private sector now because employers are trying to do something about cost. Steve, right now everyone does one thing when you have a problem with your health care. They shift cost. They raise your deductibles, and they make it harder to get health care. Well, that only drives the cost up more. So we need to go back to the way it was where you go to your doctor, you get the type of care you need. If you need to see a specialist, they send you to a specialist. But the savings really are less hospital visits, less ER visits, less specialist visits, and honestly, less going to the doctor.
How much support is there for this?
Well, the labor organizations, when I met, they are 100% in favor of the concept. You have to design the plan.
Sure.
I need one vote from management, which is Christie's team.
You don't need legislation for this.
Don't need legislation.
What do you need?
We created these these labor management panels.
Right.
And I just need one management person to vote with the labor side, and you'll create a pilot. And Steve, what I'm saying is, we know this works. I've seen it around the country. I'm looking at it for my own iron workers. So create the pilot.
Your union.
Yes. So create the pilot, generate the numbers over 3 years.
Right.
And then then I can tell you it doesn't cost us anything. The treasurer came out.
But the pilot has to be done.
But the pilot has to be created to put the specs out to get the doctors to bid on. People say the doctors won't participate. The doctors want to participate because what happens is instead of fee for service, they're on salary now.
Got it.
And I had two major doctor groups with representing 2,500 doctors that were at the press conference saying we would do this tomorrow if it was available.
And real quick before I let you go, talk to the governor about it?
Yeah. And we'll see where he goes with it. But the 24th is today.
Yep.
It's my daughter's birthday, so it's a very important day.
Congratulations. And your daughter's been
22.
Yeah, she's been a key to your life in public and been an inspiration to you. And we thank you for your time. We'll be back right after this from the Senate chamber. Thank you, Steve.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. And 13 for WNET. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health, TD Bank, NJ Best, Fedway Associates, Community Education Centers, the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey.